This is Mrs. Valent going to take you through sketching, doing your first isometric sketch using the crating method, the camera. So this is the isometric sketch, exercise number 1, the camera. So if I take count of the shape, I'm going to identify where on the shape I might put the Y. So I'm going to place my Y in that corner. And so with reference to the volume that I've got to place in this space to the right, I'm going to place that Y just slightly to the left of center. So trying to imagine that I'm cutting a cake very evenly and I'm trying to get that Y with those 30 degree angles, but 120 between each line. So there's my starting point. If I was going to use the crow's foot method, whereby you do a little crow's foot down the bottom, okay, I would be starting from this point, okay, which is also valid, and there's no problem with that as well. Okay, so it just depends on where you want to start. So I'm going to start with the Y. All right, so now I need to extend that Y out. I'm going to go fairly far to the right, and I'm going to just build all and box in all of these shapes, and then I will start to carve it down to get more detail going on. So with the lens, the button, and this other object, I guess, up the top. I guess that might be a flash. All right, so continuing. I'm going to extend this out, trying to imagine that's a 30-degree angle. In the previous video, I mentioned that the way I always think of 30 degrees is if I was going for dividing a 90-degree angle in half, that is 45. So 30 degrees is always just a tad lower than 45. So, you know, I think this is okay. I probably am taking a bit too low. So I'll have another go there. So I'll just go, that's not too bad. Okay, and I'm going to drop that down to get the front face. And I'm going to take this back to get the depth of the camera as well. So X, Y, Z. Now, yeah, it seems, if I'm looking at it from different angles, it seems about right. So I'm going to continue. I haven't made my Y too distorted. All right, so once I've extended this out, I'm going to do the top face like it did in the example on the info sheet. So again, trying to make sure that when I do the top face, I'm going to keep this line that same angle. So I'm going to keep that parallel to that. And that's a really important step. Even if your angles are slightly off, if you don't make them parallel, it will look strange. Like even if your angles are slightly up or slightly down, as long as it's parallel, it will come out looking right. Okay, again, it's a sketch, it's not perfect. So I've extended that one out and I've double checked that those lines are parallel. Now I need to do one on the far edge, so I'm checking that, you know, what I'm going to do is going to be fairly parallel to the original. Okay, so there's my top face. Now I'm going to take my edges down. So I'm going to take those edges down. So I like to do a vertical, trying to make sure they are vertical. Again, I've got my reference Y, so I can check that. And decide, just, you know, visually decide, proportionally decide where that's going to end. So probably around there. And now I've got another job. I've got to make that line and this line parallel. Double checking before I commit too much and move on. Okay, it's pretty close. Okay, so, and again, I'm going to just finish my rectangular prism here by drawing this line down on the bottom. Okay, so that's the body of my camera now. At this point, I could start crating in the front piece, the lens area. Now, again, I'm going to box this in. I'm not going to just, you know, freehand it without boxing in first. All right, so I want to get the middle part of my camera, so I want it to be fairly big, not too massive. So probably keeping this distance similar to this distance. So it looks about right. So keeping those distances about the same. And then, okay, so those are my verticals. And now I want to imagine, I've got to imagine if this was a proper circle, not an oval or an ellipse, I've got to imagine this is going to be a diamond. So if I run a line, from there to there, where does it end? Does that line look like it's going to be in line? Yeah, it looks pretty good. So I can feel fairly confident that this, what I'm drawing, is kind of a square, because I can see that those points are in line. And if I looked at it from that angle, that would be a proper diamond where those points are kind of in line with each other. All right, so here I've got just a front face. I've got that front face of my camera body divided up. Now I'm going to extend these points out. Now this is where lines can start getting wacky, so just be careful. So I'm just going to extend these out, trying to keep parallel to the existing lines I've started. Okay, and then squaring down, so that's going to be my lens. It's a short throw lens. It's a wide angle lens. It's not going to be yeah, one of those giant lenses. Okay, trying to keep all my lines fairly parallel to each other. All right, so I've boxed in where that lens is going to be. Now I'm going to box in the top. Again, dividing up the top into sections. So I'm going to keep this fairly much in line with the lens boxing in. So it looks kind of like I've referenced, and like everything looks like they're, you know, in line with each other. So I've divided up that top into 3 parts. Now I'm just going to do some vertical lines off that to give it a bit of height. And I can start boxing in the top face as well. Again, trying to keep all my lines nice and parallel. Okay. And then the last 2 points I need to box in is this one on the left and on the right. So I'm going to place another square there. This one's slightly behind this. I'm just going to make sure that they're in line. Trying to keep all of my lines parallel and in line. Okay, so there we go. Now I've got to add a bit of volume to these as well. So a few verticals off those will give me my height. And just finishing those off. And here again we've got some lines we've got to do to give us some height there. Okay, so now we've got to do the isometric circles. On this top piece where there might be a flash or something, I could identify a line across there if I wanted, and then I can join that point and that point to create my angle. It's fairly straightforward. Yeah, let's create these cylinders. So again, I'm going to find the midpoint of these edges. Okay, just try and make sure it's the midpoint. Now in the obtuse angle, in the really open angle, I'm going to create a very large radius arc on both sides there. Okay, now between the acute angle, in this really tight angle, I'm going to push that as much as seems reasonable into that corner, and same down here. I'm going to push that arc into the corner, and I end up with an isometric circle. It's a pretty surefire way to get a nice isometric circle. If you don't use the reference points, it never looks right. Okay, so here we've got these reference points again, trying to make sure I get the halfway mark on these lines, and that's going to be directly below that. So I can do a nice open arc between these 2 points, and then the really tight smaller radius arc inside there. Okay, so now I'm going to do a line that's tangent but parallel. You can see that. I'm going to reference that. I'm going to take a point line that's tangent to both of those isometric circles, and same there. And I have my lens. I have the basic shape of my lens. Same deal here. Going to mark those corners, just the midpoints on those lines. Big arc, tight radius arc, pushing in, and same down below. I'm just going to do part of it because I really only see the front part. So big arc, and there's going to be part of that arc that just sort of rocks up there, and it disappears into this vertical. Okay, so that's it. Now I would definitely go over this with an outline. I've got a kind of a line that comes around here, so I can just put in that detail because it makes sure all those lines sort of connect properly, don't look like they're misaligned. So I can go over this with an outline and clean it up and make it look good and rub out all of the mess, all my thinking mess. That's it.